This is the Chapter 20 solution. Now, what I'm going to do is continue working on the Chapter 19 solution. So make sure that you open that up. I called mine My Travel, and so you'll want to open that project, and then we'll just keep working on it. As a reminder, in the My Travel project, what we did is we modified our settings file to have the Home Pages app that we created. There's the Home Pages app. And then we also modified the path to have the admin and the include of the home pages. And then we also did the collection of all the static files, which is this folder. And then this is the folder that will be used for deployment. And then we created a static folder and put our own CSS files from the project in there along with the images. We didn't have a JS file. And then along with that, we created the Home Pages app and we modified the URLs. And I'm going to actually modify this one to put that home page at the very end. That's usually the standard. And we modified our views file to have an index page and the about page. And then they rendered the index template and the about template. And here's the templates folder with the home pages subfolder, and then we had our about, which did inheritance, and our index, which also did inheritance. And remembered that we had to do the extends before we did any of the load static. And then there's our inherited base file that we used. And that pretty much is your project that we did in Chapter 19. So now we're going to go ahead and modify that one. So open that one up. I added mine as a workspace. And the first thing it says we need to do is we need to modify the About menu in the index HTML template. So I'm going to open up that index HTML template. And if we look here, we say, well, that's not really in this file, is it? And that's because we extended from the base. So if I open up the base, and I look for the menu item, and you just need to scroll down until you see the About menu, which is right here. Currently, we said display that HTML file, which we know that isn't the way it works. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump back over here to the index, and I'm going to copy this href, which actually displays the About by calling the About namespace. And that About namespace is listed in your home page's URLs right there. So that's smart enough that if you call that, it will call the About page view. So back in your base, I'm going to go ahead and replace the href trying to display an HTML file with that href, which actually says do a DTL tag URL, call the About namespace. And we'll save that. And then let's just make sure that that part works. So I'm going to go ahead and open up a terminal window and run my server, Python manage.py run server, and then click on the URL. Here's what it looks like. And if I click on this menu item now, it should go to the About template, which it does. So that's step one. Go ahead and close that. That's step one of Chapter 20 solution. Let's go ahead and take a look at the next thing. It says that we need to actually create a brand new application called Travel Sites. So terminal, new terminal, Python manage.py start app travel sites. And we'll create that application. And then come over here, you don't see it, but if you click on refresh, it now shows up as an application right there. Now, while we're here, let's go ahead and add a brand new folder to templates for that travel site and any templates. So I'll right mouse click on templates, new folder, and we'll call it travel sites. And this is where I'll put any templates for this application. Next thing we need to do then is we need to create a brand new file called showtrips.html, and we're going to go ahead and inherit from the base. So what I like to do is find another file that's already out there, another HTML file. So let's go to our home pages index, and we're just going to copy all of this, create a brand new file, we'll paste it, file, save as, and we want to call this one showtrips.html, and we want to store that in the travel sites subfolder. And what we'll do here is within this block content, that's what's going to change. So we can just wipe that out. We'll leave it blank for right now. So now we need to modify the show trips to have either a link or a button for Asia, Africa, Australia, Europe, North America, and South America. Sorry, Antarctica. Our company doesn't travel there. So what I want to do is I'm just going to jump over here back to index, and I'm going to copy this section, go back to trips, paste it in, and I'm going to get rid of this div, and I'm going to name this one, choose an area. And then right here for this button, I'm going to copy this and I'm going to paste it so that we have one for every area that we're going to visit, and that's 6 of them. So 5, 6. Then I'm going to come back over here and I'm just going to change the text. This will be Asia, and actually our first one is Africa, and this will be Asia, and the next one will be Australia. The fourth one will be Europe. This will be North America, and the last entry will be South America. And then what we're going to do is in each one of these, we're going to send it to the route name associated with each of these. And so I'm just going to type in Africa, Asia, Australia, Europe, spelled correctly would help out, and then North America, and the last one will be South America. Now the other thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a little thing here that says page view. You don't have to do that. That's just sort of a standard, but just think of this. If I did page view, what is this really trying to represent? We might think that's representing a function, a view function that's out there. But what are these really? These are route names. So we're going to go ahead and stay with the areas, and this will become the route name for each of the paths that we're going to make. And go ahead and save that. And that's going to be our show trips. And so the next thing that we need to do, and you could have made these hrefs links rather than buttons, up to you. The next thing that we're going to do is we need to create data for each of these different trips. We're going to have a view file and also routes associated with it. So in order to make show trips show up, we're going to have to write a view function for that and also modify a path. So here is the travel sites app, and if we go to the views, that's the view function we want to write right here. Now one thing you can do is come over here to home pages, and we can copy a view and then go back to the travel sites view, paste it in, and then we need to have some type of route name for this, some view function name. So let's just call this show trips page view, and this is going to take us to the travel sites template, and we will display the template associated with that, which is show trips. right here. That'll be show trips.html. So there's the view function to display that page. Now we need to go and create a URLs file for this application. And one thing I do is, once again, I like to copy and paste. So I'm going to copy the URLs from the other application from home pages, and I'll come over to travel sites, and we're going to say File, New, paste that in, File, Save As, and we're going to go to the travel sites, and that's going to be the urls.py file. And then we need to decide what route we want and the name of that index page that we're going to call. And we know that it's called Show Trips Page View. So if I come back over to here, it's going to be Show Trips Page View. We'll give it a name of Show Trips. And in fact, we come back over here to the index of the homepage app, we're going to have to modify that to call Show Trips. And then right here, let's go ahead and write Show Trips. And we won't need that empty route. We could keep that. In fact, maybe it'd make more sense to have the empty route and actually have that one be the show trips for this application. We could call it index, but we already have an index namespace, so let's just leave it show trips and we'll say it's an empty one. Save that. Now let's go to the projects urls.py file. And in that projects URL, we want to go ahead and add a path, and we're going to say if it ever calls show trips, then we're going to go to the include of travel sites dot URLs and add a comma right there. Okay, so far we're looking pretty good. Down here we say we have the import index page view, and that's because back in the py file for the show trips, that's actually the name of it. So if you look at the urls.py file, that's the name that you need to import. And we didn't need the other one in there. So now it understands which one we're working with. The last thing we need to do for right now is go ahead and let's open up our templates for the index page. And where we used to call the about, we now want to call the route for the show trips, which is right here. So back in index, instead of about, we're going to say show trips. Let's go ahead and save that. And let's see what errors we have when we go to the web page. Here's what the web page looks like. The about looks good still. Now if I click on the tell me more, it says that we don't have Africa and all these different routes, and that's because we haven't made them yet. So let's go ahead and close that. And then the next step that we need to do, we do know it's trying to call this though, so that's good. So the next step is that back in our show trips HTML, we're going to have to write URLs to handle this. We're going to have to say this is the template when this path is called. So let's open up our views for that application. So here's our travel sites. There's the views for it. We have our show page, but then we also need to do one for the different routes. We have to define the routes, and then we have to write the different views for it. But we could go ahead and do the views right now. We could say show Africa page view. Once again, you don't have to say the word page view. It's up to you. And for right now, we're just going to say return an HTTP response object. We'll say Africa, but we'll have to make sure that we come up to here and we actually import the HTTP response class. So we'll go ahead and paste that line in so that we now have access to the response class. Let's do the same thing for Asia. This will be our show Asia. Asia, and of course you can make these capitalized if you want, probably the better thing to do. And then we'll do our show for Australia. And right here we'll say Australia. And we need to do Europe. And then after Europe, we need to do North America. And then the last one that we need to do will be South America. And we're going to modify these views later on, but we just need to make sure that we have them there. Okay, we now have our views in place, and here's our travel sites. So now what we need to do is we need to add a path for each one of those and then call the appropriate view function. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the recording, type those in, and then you can pause it and type them in too. So here's what the urls.py file looks like for the travel sites application. And we're going to have to fix some other typos that we have. But we made URL patterns or routes for Africa, Asia, Australia, Europe, North America, South America. And then we specified the view function that's going to be called. And then we gave each of them a namespace. So that's your URLs for the travel sites. Now, things that you need to still fix. Back on the views file, make sure that any misspelled words are corrected. For instance, I think I said HTTP response, so make sure those are all response on that return. And you'll run these and you'll see any typos that you have. You could have more even. So make sure those all say response, and that's in the views.py file. In your show trips HTML, make sure you have spelled Australia correctly. And then these are going to be the names of these paths. So they have to match exactly. And those are just going to be buttons for right now. And I think we're ready to go after that. Make sure everything is saved. Open up a terminal window. Type in Python manage.py run server. Go ahead and click on this link. It opens up the main page. There's the about. Tell me more should open up show trips, which it does. Now this doesn't look pretty, and you can go and make things look pretty. We can add spaces, we can stack them, we can make this look better. And then if you click on any of these, we return the HTTP response for that country. And there's the South America. So that's what it's looking like so far. Now that we know that the navigation at least works, and once again, you could come over here and clean these buttons up a little bit better. We could put them on separate lines. And like I said, you could come over here and you could change the CSS, make the colors different. We can just add a little BR tag in between these buttons and clean it up a tiny bit. We're not going to focus on the UX on this, but click on terminal. And then we'll say Python manage.py run server. And we'll go ahead and click on that one more time. And not looking great, but hey, you can see all the buttons. You can go and change this to be a different color, put a background color. You can go modify all the CSS that you learned in chapter 19. So anyway, that's what we have so far. So the next thing that we need to do is currently in our views, we're just returning an HTTP response. Well, we actually want to render. And what we want to do with that render is we want to call just one HTML file and we're going to pass it the area name. So let's do the following. We're just going to copy that line, paste it right here, and then we want to work with some data that we want to pass. And you can call it anything you want, but if you look back in the views function for one of the chapters that we worked on, you could actually use the context variable. But once again, you can use any variable you want. Within the views for our travel sites, we want to say the following. Context equals, and then we're going to use a dictionary. And within that dictionary, we need to specify a key and a value. And we'll say the key is area, and the value for this view function will be Africa. And then right here, we want to go ahead and pass context. And then in this area, instead of the show trips, we want to create a brand new HTML file. And I'm just going to copy this block, file new, paste, and we're going to get rid of this header. And actually we can let's get rid of this header, and we'll leave that container. We'll get rid of these. And then under here, we're just going to display an A tag. Sorry, we're going to do an H1 tag, and then we'll close off that H1 tag. And we'll save that. And let's call this one display trips.html. That'll be the name of the common template that all of our view functions will call. And go ahead and save that under the travel sites. Click save. And actually, let's go ahead and get rid of this one also. We're just going to have that div tag, and we're going to say welcome to, and then we'll do a DTL variable, and we want to call whatever the name of that value was in the context, which was area. So back over here on display trips, we'll say welcome to area. And so this file will be used by all those view functions, and we're going to dynamically pass the name of the trip here. So back over here on the views for travel site, there's the area key. It should display Africa. And right here, instead of show trips, we want to call display trips. And then we want to copy this code for each of these other view functions. And we want to change the country that they're traveling to. And we could have just written one common view function and then passed parameters around. But I just wanted you to have some practice writing view functions and rendering. This will be North America. And the last one will be South America. Now, when we save that, we have our trips HTML already saved. And this is our display trips. Now, what we need to do, we already know that if you go to show trips, you'll click on one of these buttons. It will take you to the namespace for the route. And our namespace is right here. The namespace will then call the view function. And the view function will then call the display trips and pass the country as the name, and then dynamically display the name in that area. Let's save that. Let's see what errors we need to change. Python manage.py run server. Let's run it. Pull the website over here. The about works. Our ugly screen right here with the font that we should have changed, but I'm going to let you do that. Our buttons, which we could make look better. In fact, maybe instead of buttons, you make images. And you just display the images here. Africa, Welcome to Africa. Welcome to Asia. Welcome to Australia. Welcome to Europe. Welcome to North America. And welcome to South America. So we know that it works. And of course, you could go make that look a lot nicer. I'll let you worry about that. And that is the Chapter 20 solution.